Hey out there, not much of a professional fade on that music. This is John Miller, the owner and senior attorney at Rock Solid Law here in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Um, I have been practicing, I realize, for 37 years now, and 30 of it has been closing real estate loans. So I'd like to shift around our subjects from real estate to estate planning to probate to business law and all points in between. But this morning we're talking about real estate closings and the need to have an attorney present at your closing. The reason I raise this subject is that there are two entities in Florida that are able to close a real estate transaction. One of them is a law office, and the other is a title company. Now, interestingly, both charge the same amount of money, although in a law office, you are assured that you have an actual attorney at law, presumably who is studied in real property law and who can help you through the closing. That is not necessarily true at a title company, although full disclosure, as always, some title companies do have lawyers on their staff. So my first message is check that out. If you're closing with somebody without a lawyer on their staff, trouble ahead. So as I mentioned a moment ago, have been closing since 1991, which turns out to be 30 years. That includes through the early aughts, the first decade of this century, the 21st century, and which included the 2008 bubble, right? So pretty much I've seen it all in that time of practice. And one of the things that I have absolutely personally observed, particularly out of something like the lead up to the last bubble, is that people that know how to resolve title deficiencies and issues have a lot of work to do after people who are not trained professionals close loans. So, because they're often mistakes. Anybody can make a mistake, but somebody trained in the law is less likely to make a mistake. I already referenced it. You know, I will have to give these some fly by night and other title companies credit. They've done a great job of marketing and convincing people that perhaps there is some extra cost in having an attorney at your closing. It couldn't be less true. The costs are the same whether you go with a law office like mine or some of the other excellent lawyers in the region, or if you go with a title company. Why? Capitalism, man. If lawyers were charging more to provide the same services, they'd put us out of business. We know what they charge. We have to compete with them, right? So you're getting a professional at the same cost as you're getting somebody who certainly never went to law school, passed the bar exam, studied real property law, etc. So in my opinion, okay, real estate purchases represent the single largest first investment most people make. Other people may spend money on big money on things other than real estate in their lives, but the first thing they're going to do is try to buy a home, right? And then one of the best paths to building wealth and family wealth and personal wealth is through real estate acquisition, either holding and renting or flipping, holding, fixing, renovating, selling. So in either one of those ways, it's a big investment for people and one that they cannot afford to lose. The entire process really is fraught with peril. These days, that includes fraud, wire fraud, people fraudulently getting involved in transactions, and I just have to. I am of the opinion that if you're with a trained professional, you're going to come off better. So, lawyers are going to have studied real property law in law school. Interestingly, maybe for you, the real property law of the United States of America rests largely on the stare decisis, the case law and the developed law of England, as we were originally established by the English. Occasionally, if you are researching real property law, you will come upon a United States case which relies on a British case, an ancient British case, for its holding. And it's kind of fascinating when that happens in a certain way. So I have to tell you, though, real property law was one of the most boring classes in law school. You're studying almost Old English in merry old England, and all these concepts of black acre and all this real property vesting and all of this sort of stuff. Wasn't really enjoyable, but I'll tell you, it led me to have a very deep understanding of the law as it relates to real property. And that has helped me to become the expert that I am today, and certainly has helped our law practice develop since it was established 30 years ago. Missing a step can absolutely affect the ownership to the property and could even cause somebody to lose it. So in addition to having graduated from law school and taken the bar exam, lawyers have an obligation to undertake continuing legal education, which is also provided by our title insurance underwriters and otherwise through other entities. So we are always keeping current on the laws affecting real property, and particularly as that may intertwine with the entity into which property is to be held. I consult with a lot of people trying to determine whether a land trust, an LLC, a sub-S corporation, holding individually, holding as a married couple, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is the best way to hold title. Someone who is not a lawyer, actually, it's illegal for them to give that advice, and they cannot. What else can't they do? They can't interpret a contract for you. They can't draft a contract for you. They can fill in the blanks in a form, but they can't do any tailoring of that instrument to your transaction. So you're going to get a cookie cutter at best in those other places. So I have promoted a number of educational courses for realtors and mortgage folks over the years through my underwriter, which is First American. One of the stories that Sue Dutcher from First American likes to tell is of the people that purchased a lot, raw land, and built the home of their dreams on it. I believe they spent in excess of $800,000 on that. And then after they had completed, after they got their CO and after they moved in, they got a knock on the door. And the knock on the door was from someone who had title to that property. They had chosen not to obtain owner's title insurance in the process, and therefore had no choice other than to negotiate to pay that person or to lose their entire, $800,000-900,000 investment. So having a lawyer on the deal, you are going to find out how title is properly vested, and that title is going to be transmitted properly to the purchaser so that it becomes your homestead or is something on which you build your wealth. I would submit to you that if there'd been a lawyer involved in that FSBO transaction that I referenced a minute ago, that never would have happened. I believe the end result was they lost everything because the other person was in the right and the other person wanted to own the beautiful home they had just built. So I often liken the lawyer's role in a closing transaction to that of a detective. We are trained professionals, and we try to uncover any issues which may be involved in the title to the property. We joke going all the way back to the Tamacawan Indians or the Spanish land grant, and to uncover those and protect the participants, protect the seller, and particularly protect the buyer, so that we are sure that good, marketable, fee simple title is transmitted in the transaction. I mentioned briefly that there come times in transactions when it is important to interpret the contractual language. Parties may have a different understanding about their agreement, and it is very important to have a lawyer trained in the interpretation of contracts to tell the parties either A, what the contract means, or to advise generally on what the law is with respect to the dispute that may have developed between them. Only an attorney at law is qualified to render such an opinion. Many times, I have found over the years that simply the presence of a qualified and respected attorney at the closing table gets a deal closed. One of the things I pride myself on most in my law practice is I get things to the table and I get transactions closed. I don't know why it is, but simply having Juris Doctor and Esquire after my name it carries respect with some people, and they tend to behave themselves at the closing table. I regularly have people that treat my staff badly over the telephone leading up to a closing, and then come in and, as we say, they're kittens in my hand, they're putty in my hand at the table, because they're just not going to act that way with somebody that they know knows a lot more about what's going on than they do. I think that's just a pleasant side effect. It can also often resolve issues which might have otherwise led to subsequent litigation at the table. If there is a serious issue, we are trained in negotiation and can help resolve the issue at the time so that it doesn't come up later. I often tell people that, in my belief, the ownership of a home, which is typically folks' first real property purchase, is the first building block of the American dream. Until the United States of America were formed, home ownership by individuals was not widely available in the world. In some countries, everything was owned by the landed nobility, like in Europe, where my ancestors come from. In other places, like Africa, there was no concept of land ownership. As the Native Americans said, you can't own the land any more than you can own the sky. Well, obviously, that's not true under our laws. And you probably know that in the beginning, rather than life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the draft said life, liberty, and property, because property ownership was so important to our founding fathers, the people that made this country. However, that was changed to the pursuit of happiness, but into the Constitution went the concept of individual home ownership. And I always take pride that those clauses were drafted by the lawyers. Our forefathers, who were attorneys, drafted that clause that allows we common people to own our homes. And I believe that that is the first building block of the American dream. So I come to work every day believing that I work in the American dream, and it is my goal to make sure every transaction is buttoned up properly. Practically, lawyers are trained in fraud prevention, wire fraud prevention, and are also insured in the event of wire theft. We use a company called Safe Escrow, which assures that there is no wire theft in any of our transactions. And we think that that's very, very important. So, as an escrow agent, it is absolutely our requirement that those funds get to the right parties. And should they not do so, we're going to be responsible. I don't know who you'd rather have standing behind your transaction, but I would submit to you that having a lawyer's bar license, his or her very ability to practice law, exceeds a title company, which may be a fly-by-night and maybe here today, gone tomorrow when that problem arises. I'll tell you, leading up to the 2008 bubble, there were a lot of title companies that opened up to take advantage of the hot market, just like the market we have now. As you'd imagine, those type of title companies are opening up now. And as soon as the gold rush, if you will, went away, they closed down. So there's nobody there to resolve those problems for people. Again, the money for the closing passes through the escrow account of an attorney who's acting as title agent. Wouldn't you feel more secure knowing that someone who could lose their bar license is putting their reputation behind the security of your money? Listen, errors occur, but attorneys are particularly positioned to correct errors which may result in documents, which may exist in the documents, and are trained on how to save the closing from going sideways. Let's try that again. Attorneys are particularly positioned to correct errors which may exist in documents, and also to save the closings. Once again, attorneys charge artificially low fees for closing services because of the competition from non-attorney title companies. So really, the fees you're seeing in a title closing are one of the best deals you can get from an attorney. I wanted to add in here that it is the seller of a home or other property who makes the choice of who will close the transaction, who provides closing title and escrow. Of course, I'm most pleased to see that as rock solid law. But I want to add, many people rely on their realtor to advise them of what company. And of course, we have many realtors who love to close with us. But also, if you are selling a piece of property or someone you know and love, or you have the opportunity for a referral, the seller gets to choose. This is because they are paying for the owner's title insurance policy. And in our part of the state, that is paid for typically by the seller. A buyer can negotiate to pay that and then choose where to close. In other parts of the state, it is the buyer that pays it by custom, and they choose the closing company. Finally, I would just like to offer everybody that's on the webinar this morning, or anybody who is watching this afterward, I'll extend it to you as well if you'll let me know that you watched to this point in the webinar, that if you refer to closing to us within the next 30 days, mention this webinar. Make sure to mention the webinar, and we will knock 50% off of the closing fee. So that will save a couple $100 for the seller in that. I write a series of articles. I'm the special magistrate for Neptune Beach, and so I write articles under the nom de plume Judge John, and I call those the Sand Life Law. And I have often joked, real property lawyers are called dirt lawyers in many places, and I joked that practicing here in Northeast Florida for the last 37 years, I'm a sand lawyer. We build our castles in the sand, and we build our futures based on our ownership of our home and other properties. Sand law is one of the things I love to do. We help people buy and sell their dream homes and move on to another one as life dictates. We make sure that the closing happens on time and professionally, and that we protect the American families that entrust us in that way. Hey, I appreciate you joining us. I'm right at the 20-minute mark. I do try to keep these between 20 and 30 minutes. If anybody has a question, if you would please type that in to the chat bar now. I'll be happy to answer that before we sign off. We are going to be talking next week about portability and about the Rock Solid Law portability calculator, which is on our website. It's a great tool which helps both the buyers and sellers, particularly sellers who are buying another Florida homestead, and realtors who need to know what portability is and how to work with it. I really appreciate you guys joining me this morning. Every Thursday at 9 o'clock, we are here, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. I will once again leave you with Lionel Richie and the Commodores. Zoom. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, stay well. See you next time.